50 kilometers is a distance we usually reserve for cars or trains. It's a number that feels theoretical until you actually try to measure it with your own feet. Most of us would agree that walking is the simplest thing a human being can do. Really, you just put one foot in front of the other, and you keep doing it until you arrive. But 50 kilometers is not just an arrival. It's a different version of reality entirely. It's about 12 hours of constant motion, assuming you don't stop to question your life. I started at dawn, when the air was still cool and the road looked like a promise of adventure. For the first 10 kilometers, I felt like a hero in a movie about grit and self-discovery. My stride was long, my breathing was steady, and I was convinced that I was built for this. We love the idea of limitless potential, don't we? It's a very comfortable thing to believe. Round kilometer 15. The conversation between my brain and my boots started to get interesting. My feet weren't complaining yet, but they were definitely starting to make their presence known. It's a strange sensation when a part of your body you usually ignore suddenly starts speaking up. You realize how much of our lives are spent ignoring the physical machinery that carries us around. Actually, it's almost like we treat our bodies like a car we never take in for a service. By kilometer 25, the hero in the movie was starting to look a lot more like a victim. This is where people usually say the wall appears, that invisible barrier made of pure exhaustion. But it didn't feel like a wall to me. It felt more like a very slow, very heavy sinking feeling. I noticed a small pebble in my shoe that I had been ignoring for at least 5 miles. Why do we do that? Why do we endure small pains as if they are badges of honor instead of just problems? I sat down on a stone wall, and the silence of the countryside felt like it was pressing against me. My brain said, "You've done enough. 25 is a respectable number. Let's call a taxi." And for a second, I almost agreed. The taxi was a rational solution to a completely irrational problem. But there's this other voice, the one that doesn't care about comfort or logic or even safety. It's the voice that insists on the 50, not because it's useful, but because it's just there. I stood up, and my legs felt like they were made of damp sand and very old, rusty hinges. The next 10 kilometers were a blur of grey asphalt and the rhythm of my own heartbeat in my ears. I stopped looking at the scenery. I was just looking at the 2 feet of road directly in front of me. It's funny how the world shrinks when you're in pain. The horizon stops mattering. Only the next step exists. People talk about mind over matter as if the mind is a wise, kind teacher leading the way home. But at kilometer 40, my mind felt more like a cruel overseer with a very short temper. It was shouting at my legs to keep moving, even though my legs were clearly staging a violent protest. I wonder if discipline is just a polite word we use for being mean to ourselves for no reason. If you're still listening, you might be wondering why anyone would choose to be their own bully. Maybe we are afraid that if we stop pushing, we'll realize there's nothing actually holding us together. At kilometer 45, the pain stopped being sharp and became a sort of heavy static noise. It was just there, like the wind or the hum of a refrigerator. You just learn to live inside of it. I noticed I was laughing. A dry, quiet sound that probably would have worried anyone passing by. I was laughing because I realized that my brain had won. It had bullied my body into total submission. But was it a victory? Or was it just a very long, very exhausting form of self-sabotage? My limits hadn't actually moved. I was just walking through the wreckage of them like they weren't there. The last 5 kilometers were the longest hours of my life. Each step felt like a heavy, final decision. I reached the finish line, a random lamp post on a map, and I didn't feel like a hero at all. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt empty, like a battery that had been drained way past zero. I sat down on the curb, and the world was very, very quiet. Even the passing cars felt like they were whispering. We tell ourselves these stories about limits being in the mind so we can feel like we're in control. But the body remembers, the body keeps the score. Even when the brain is busy writing a grand speech. My legs didn't feel like mine anymore. They were just heavy objects attached to a very tired torso. I looked at my phone and saw the 50.0 kilometers on the screen. It was just a digit. Just a cold number. It didn't change who I was. It didn't solve my problems. It didn't even make the evening coffee taste better. Maybe the limit isn't something we break. Maybe it's just the place where we stop being honest with ourselves. We push through the red lights our body sends us. And we call it willpower because it sounds noble. I'm walking again today. But only to the kitchen, and even that feels like a bit of a stretch, honestly. I wonder if you've ever pushed so far that you stopped recognizing the person doing the pushing. It's a strange place to visit, that edge of yourself. I'm not sure I'd recommend the long-term stay. If you've ever walked until the road ran out, maybe you've seen that strange shadow of yourself too. Sometimes the mind wins the battle only to realize it has destroyed the kingdom it was trying to save. The road is still there, stretching out into the dark, indifferent to whether we choose to walk it or not. We check our muscles for strength when we should probably be checking our motives for a pulse. I think I'll sit here a little longer. The ground is hard, but it's the most honest thing I've felt all day. 50 kilometers is a distance we usually reserve for cars or trains. And honestly, after today, I think the cars might have the right idea about how to handle the distance. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.